A Chiari malformation is where you're going to have something going on at the base of the brain. It can involve either the brain stem or a part that's called the cerebellum. It's responsible for your balance coordination. And what it's actually doing is it's descending down instead of being in the skull. It's actually descending down into the upper part of your neck. Let's use this as a little bit of a visualization because, in a nutshell, this is you. So we've got a balloon with a piece of string attached. This is essentially your brain and your spinal cord with a little model of the base of your skull. So what's a Chiari malformation? A Chiari malformation is going to occur where, because of either a developmental issue with the shape of the skull or because of tension somewhere lower, that effectively you pull the string and you start doing this. And like you see right there, that balloon, your brain, can start to descend down into the opening of the skull. Now, that's going to be a big problem because it's going to be putting pressure on your brainstem right up through here. And so very commonly, people are going to experience headaches, migraines, dizziness, vertigo, trouble with speech, trouble with swallowing, and all kinds of other different neurological issues with the body. Now, here's what a lot of times people don't know about. You see, they have these issues, they go to a neurologist, they have an MRI taken, and the MRI says that, quote, everything is normal. And the reason for that is because in order for the diagnosis of a Chiari malformation to be reached, you've got to have it to where your brainstem is descending down by about 5 millimeters. Here's a couple little bits of interesting research you may want to know. They did a few studies over in the US where they wanted to see the difference between if you're taking an MRI of a person lying flat versus if they were upstanding. And they wanted to have a look at this in people who had experienced, in particular, whiplash injuries. Why? Because, as I said, if you've got a whiplash injury, that can be one of those things that's producing tension in the string. So here's what they found. What they found was that it was about 5 to 6%, whether whiplash or not, of people who were experiencing issues demonstrated on an MRI a diagnosable Chiari malformation. But when they took the MRI of people when they were standing up, that number increased to 23%. In other words, it was 3 to 4 times higher when you're looking at an MRI in a different way. So here's the problem. The problem is if you're saying, okay, strict criteria 5 millimeters, that's when we're going to call it a Chiari malformation. You could actually be missing a huge percent of problems that are actually going on. And so people then are searching for answers. They're going to specialist to specialist to specialist, and nobody can tell them what's going on. Unfortunately, a good chunk of the time, because they're doing nothing more than looking at the report. And the report says everything's normal, when in reality, if you were to take the test a different way, you might see something completely different. Upright MRIs are exceptionally rare in Australia. I believe that there's only 2 in the whole country. And so odds are you're probably not going to be able to get that kind of test. But nevertheless, what are going to be some of the hallmarks that there could be an issue there that deserves a little bit more attention? Well, firstly, it could be that you're experiencing any number of those symptoms that we've already talked about. One of the more common ones is actually going to be a fibromyalgia, where a recent study actually found that 80% of people who were experiencing fibromyalgia, what they had was they had an issue right up at the base of the brainstem, upper part of the neck here, that was interfering with the normal flow of the fluid around the brain. And it's believed that that actually could be one of the issues. And as a little bit to go on top of that, there's some other interesting research also out of the US that says and finds that when you've got issues with the overall alignment in the upper neck, that actually can be one of the contributing factors for why people are actually developing things like fibromyalgia. Why? Because it's affecting the flow of the fluid around the brain. So I'm simply going to ask the question here. If you've been experiencing different kinds of problems, you've been to a number of different practitioners, and everybody keeps saying that everything is normal, but you know in your heart something is not right, let me ask you, who's been looking very specifically at the overall structure and alignment of your neck? Because issues even as small as 2 millimeters, which is about the size of a grain of sand, that gets in your eye, it's not going to feel good. So the same thing is if you've got an issue like that in your neck, even though it's very, very small, it could be having a very profound impact on the flow of the fluid and creating tension through that string, and ultimately having a very severe impact on your overall health. So, have you had your neck looked at if you've been experiencing these different kinds of issues? And if you haven't, I would absolutely encourage you to take that next step to make sure that that is not one of the missing pieces of the puzzle here, so that you can look and find that breakthrough so that you can start again to enjoy the quality of life that you really want. Thanks for watching this video.
For more information about upper cervical care, please call us on 3188 9329 or visit us at atlashealth.com.au.